Back to the It's Too Easy podcast. Jake and Zach back with another episode after getting hot in week one for the NFL. So, Jake, why don't you get us started for week two? What's the slate looking like?
Yeah, week one was obviously pretty fun on the right side of a lot of plays, so it turned out pretty fun. Week two is a lot more interesting games too, a lot more divisional games as well. So yeah, looking forward to it. First game on the slate, we got the Commanders and the Packers. Um, been going back and forth. I've been seeing a lot of love for the Packers after week one, and I'd imagine the books are going to skew that way. I know I initially saw the line at 3.5, and I was just thinking, man, with how good the Commanders looked last season, and I know the Packers are getting a lot of love after a big win over the Lions in Week One. But personally, you and I talked about this before. New offensive defensive coordinator for the Lions, still no Aiden Hutchinson. They had some sore thumbs that they definitely need to be kicking into rhythm. And I think the Packers are just getting a little bit too much love this week, personally. So I'm going to go with the Commanders plus 3.5. I feel like there's no reason they shouldn't keep this within a field goal. It's not super cold at Lambeau as far as I know yet. And I got a lot of trust in Jaden Daniels and this Commanders team. They looked really good against the Giants in week one. And as long as they can hold this Packers offense from scoring, I do think that the Packers offense is still pretty young. I have a lot of young wide receivers, and although they performed really well in week one, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more difficult to replicate without all the experience. So, I'm going to stick with Commanders in week one. Week two, Commanders 3.5.
Yeah, this one's interesting. We definitely talked about the Packers looking a little overrated after that first performance. Uh, New O and D coordinators with a QB that I've always found to be mid. I think that was pretty obvious against the Packers. They didn't really dominate either. The Lions had a chance to go punch it in or at least get a field goal, and then I believe it was a fumble, if not a pick. And then Packers went back down and scored, kind of pulled away at that point. Um, the defense did look solid. I think also part of that was the field position wasn't great for the Lions to start. So I think that they bounced back themselves. But with that, I like the Packers this week to win. I don't love the 3.5. Um, I do think just because it's a short week, they are at home. So I'm sure after watching week one and then now having all the fans, ready to be there and be hyped after seeing a huge win for them in the division last week. They'll be into it. The crowd's going to be roaring. And I think it is going to be tough for Washington to go get a win on the road on a short week. So with that, I'm going to go with the Packers. I think I'm going to probably end up taking the -3. Don't necessarily love it. I think I prefer to uh, root for the plus 3.5, but I'm also not rooting for the Commanders being in our division. So let's go back.
Right on. Second game, we got Jags and Bengals. I don't have too much to say. The Jaguars actually did look pretty solid in week one, but I believe they played a Panthers team that is still kind of trying to figure things out. Got some new wide receiving weapons on the Panthers. I think just weren't able to get touches on the ball. So I do think the Jaguars looked pretty good. They did just trade Tank Bigsby over to the Eagles, so I do think that's going to be a little bit of a loss for them. The Bengals D actually played pretty well in week one. It was a bit of a surprise for that. I was expecting more of a shootout in that game. But I do think that the Bengals are still going to be able to win this game at home. I think they play a lot. Or yeah, sorry. Yeah, Jaguars and Bengals. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Jags.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that the Bengals, their defense actually looked pretty good in week one. Jags did as well, but they also played that Panthers team that we were talking about, just has a lot of inexperience. But yeah, I'm going to stick with the Bengals money line in this one. I think that after week one, obviously last year, the last couple of years, they've been starting pretty poor just based on the defense. But if the defense can replicate anything that they did last week, I do think sooner or later, Joe Burrow is going to have to get going. The offensive line did not look great, but I think that's a lot of credit to the Browns front four. Obviously, they got Myles Garrett and a lot of weapons up there. So I'm not sure the Jaguars really have that level of a front four. I think for that reason, Joe's going to have a lot more time. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the Bengals money line.
Yeah, this one will be interesting. Yeah, Panthers don't have an offense necessarily figured out, especially after trading Thielen, who was a pretty nice piece for the end of the season for Bryce Young. McMillan stepped in, did well. Chuba did well. So excited to see how they do. But yeah, Jaguars did look solid, and they looked solid with Brian Thomas having the one catch. Who's their star, who had 1,200 yards last week.
Yeah.
And so I do expect him to have a good bounce back game here. I'm sure part of that was trying to force the ball to Travis Hunter early to get him accustomed to being a part of the offense and seeing what that could look like in a game that didn't necessarily matter once they had control over the Panthers and then the ballet and everything. There's also part of that. ETN also looked phenomenal on the ground. I think he had 100 plus. He also received for a few more. Uh, and the Bengals didn't have to worry about a running back running the ball effectively against them last week with the Browns. Now, Sampson also had some quite a few receptions and yards receiving, but not much on the ground game. So I think that's going to open it up a little bit for the Jaguars to put up some points. I do think the Bengals are going to put up a lot of points. So my favorite play this week is the over. I'm going to take it at 47.5. I believe it's at 48.5 right now. I do also feel like the Jags are going to cover, but I'd rather just play the over this week.
Yeah, right on. And then the next game got the Giants and the Cowboys. Um, Cowboys actually looked pretty good against the Eagles. Feel like they had a couple things not go their way, a couple drops, couple defensive plays that they probably should have made to keep themselves in the game. Um, Obviously, missing Micah is going to be a big piece of that defense not performing. I know that Deron Bland, who just signed a huge contract extension, is going to be out this week. So that's going to be a little bit tougher for the Cowboys, but I don't think that the Giants' offense is really clicking quite yet. So I am actually going to stick with the Cowboys' money line. They are at home. I think they are going to be the better team in this game, and they do typically play pretty well at home. So, yeah, just going to stick with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I like the Cowboys to get it done. This line this week was at 3 actually, and now it's up to 5.5. So I don't like it as much as I did. I do like the
Yeah.
Cowboys to win by 3. I feel like it could be a 3 to 8 point game, depending on how things roll out. Yeah, Malik Neighbors had a pretty quiet week as well. A little bit of frustration. I know he ended with 71 yards, I believe. But he was frustrated on the sideline, arguing day ball. So I'm sure they get that figured out a little bit this week. Like you said, no Deron Bland for the Cowboys this week is going to hurt with the Trayvon, who's still ramping back up. And so I do think that they'll be able to throw the ball pretty well. Our rush defense against the Eagles did look solid. I think in part was the weather delay allowed us more time to kind of figure out what to do because when we came back from that, it was very good. Before that, it wasn't great. So I'm interested to see how this game goes. Could be a couple turnovers that can sway the game either direction.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Cowboys -3, but also like a couple different plays. I feel like Darius Slayton always plays well against us. His line's only at 24.5 yards, so I'm going to take the over on that. Tyrone Tracy is also the main back for the Giants, who had 10 carries last week. And he should get more volume than that this week without playing from behind the whole time,
Yeah.
at least not seriously behind. So I like his over on 41 yards as well. But I do think the Cowboys are going to come away with a win. Just not sure about 5.5.
Yeah, I agree. I actually do like those Tracy and Slayton lines. Those two guys are going to be due for a breakout if they're going to kind of keep their season momentum rolling. Then we got the Bears and the Lions, two teams that, I mean, the Bears looked great the first half. Obviously, we're all over McCarthy. Just blew it in the second half. Couldn't get anything going offensively. Had a really poor field position. Um, and then the Lions, obviously, they didn't look great against the Packers. I do think they're still trying to figure things out with their offensive and defensive coordinator being brand new. But I do think that this being another divisional game for them, I just don't see them losing this. It is gonna. I do think it's gonna be close, but I think I'm gonna buy it down to Lions -2.5, just because I think that it's gonna be pretty likely that this is like a tie game going into late in the fourth, and then Goff to lead them to a field goal would make a lot of sense. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Lions -2.5.
Yeah, I'm leaning on that same thing. It does seem kind of like a strange jump very quickly, considering
Yeah,
this was also a line that was 3.5, and I believe it's at 5.5 as well now. Um, I don't love 5.5. I feel like this could easily be a field goal game. So if anything, I would actually be leaning. Oh, it's up to 6.5. Um, so my lean with that would be Bears 6.5. Maybe buy it even to 7.
yeah,
But I do think this is a game the Lions should win at home, and they need to win at home. Like you said, it's a divisional. The Bears, Caleb looked good in the first half. and then second half came and kind of reverted to his old ways, holding on to the ball for too long. Had four clear plays with guys open over the field, including a DJ Moore touchdown at the end to put the game away, and he just didn't execute. So
Yeah.
with the Lions, Aiden Hutchinson being there, I think he's going to create some chaos, and I think it's going to be a lot of old ways for Caleb. Maybe not the whole game, but enough where the Lions should at least be able to get the game.
Yeah, right on. Then we got the Rams and the Titans. Titans actually played a pretty solid game in Denver this past week. I thought they looked pretty good. The wide receivers kind of had some uncharacteristic drops, especially Calvin Ridley. I kind of wasn't really expecting that out of them. But I thought Cam Ward, even though the numbers didn't tell the story, I thought that he actually played pretty well in his first NFL game. Didn't really turn over the ball too much, which is a big success going against that Broncos defense. That being said, I do still like the Rams money line. I think that the Rams are just ramped up to make another run, and they also didn't look incredibly great in a really low-scoring game with Houston last week. But I do think that they'll be able to get the job done just based on experience level here. I do like the Rams defense a lot, so I think it's just going to be more growing pains for Cam Ward having to face another solid defense. But given these first two games of his season, having to play against the Broncos D-line and then the Rams D-line, I think he's going to be able to get a lot of experience, and that'll kind of push the Titans forward for future wins. But yeah, they're playing two really tough games to open up the season, so I'm just going to stick with the Rams money line.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I love Cam Ward. I'm interested to see what they can do. Um, if they can win this game, I think they have a chance to turn things around quicker than people expect this season. Not necessarily winning the division, but maybe even getting to 500 or close to it. But I don't know if they will win this game. I actually do think that they'll keep it close. I feel like their defense played really well with four turnovers against Denver in Denver. So if their defense can get turnovers from a pretty common interception guy in Matt Stafford, he kind of
Yeah.
just slings it, and he also is coming off a little bit of a back injury. So I feel like if they can get a pick or two, they can definitely keep themselves in this game, keep it close, get a couple more points, and if they can get touchdowns, I think they can potentially win the game. But with that being said, I am going to take the Titans with the +6. I also found a line for this game that I love for a guy that's been a rival of them for his whole career. Tyler Lockett has a line set at just 16 and a half yards. I think that he can do that on one play. So I'm going to take Tyler Lockett over 16 and a half and take those Titans +6.
Right on. Love that. And then move on to the Patriots and the Dolphins. Um, yeah, this game is one of those that really had me stumped because the Dolphins look so bad, uncharacteristically bad in week one. We know they're a super hit and miss team where one week they can put up 70 and one week they can get blown out by 30 by the Colts. Um, Luckily for them, it was the opening game of the season, so there's still a lot to figure out. I do think that Mike McDaniel, his coaching style is starting to fall off a little bit. Kind of initially when he got there, he kind of had the hype around him. Obviously, is an offensive guru, so that's always good to have. But Tua, after all these injuries, it's really just tough to trust him. I'm not sure exactly where the line's at right now, but I do think with the Dolphins being at home, they'll be able to get a win. I just don't think it's going to be pretty in any manner, especially after that opening week. I thought the Patriots looked a lot better with Drake May as their quarterback, and their defense wasn't too bad, I guess I should say. I mean, the Raiders looked pretty solid as well, so that's kind of a different story. But yeah, I just think the Dolphins are going to be able to come back from that and try and kind of rally the troops a little bit. And with them being at home, their home fans are going to be, hollering. So I really think this will be a good chance for them to get a win, especially in their division.
Yeah, this one's interesting. 1.5 point for the Dolphins at home. We had obviously talked about fading the Dolphins last week because they always suck on the road. Love the Colts this year also, which we've talked about. Like I said, put some respect on my guy Danny Dimes' name. He's a dog. But no, this week I am taking the Patriots. We had a good call on it last week. Good feel out for that Raiders game. The thing about it that bothers me is their rush defense was phenomenal, where JT only had 38 yards on 19 carries. So if they can slow down A-Chain, it's going to require Tua to sling it I think Gino also threw for 370 or something like that, though.
Yeah.
And now, if Tua's throwing it that much, he's going to throw a pick or two at least to Christian Gonzalez, Oregon guy who's a dog. Uh, but also, you got speedsters all around the field with A-Chain, Waddle, and Tyreek, where if they're going to bounce back, you might as well do it against a team that just gave up 370 through the air to Geno Smith. So that kind of worries me. So rather than just taking the Patriots on the money line, I'm going to buy it to 3. But I kind of feel like they're going to bounce back and get a win here. I feel like Travion Henderson didn't get enough touches, but he got 5 yards of carry, a couple receptions. And then Stephon Diggs did look solid. I think he had 5 or 6 catches for around 60 yards coming back from an injury himself last year. Um, so yeah, interested to see how this game plays out. Again, division game. Miami is usually solid at home, but after watching what we saw week 1, I'm not taking them, and I'm gonna fade it and just take the +3 for Patriots.
Yeah, right on. Then we'll move on to another interesting game. We got the Niners and the Saints. The Saints are the home team in this one. I was shocked that they started Rattler in game one, to be honest. I figured Hayner would be the better option, or even to go to Tyler Shaw, who they had a lot of hopes for coming in from the draft. But yeah, starting if they're going to start Rattler, I kind of don't really have a whole lot of faith in that team, to be honest. And even with the Niners having Mac Jones as their backup option, I know Purdy's likely going to be out a couple weeks now. I do think that Mac Jones is still going to be able to outplay Spencer Rattler. If they play Hayner, it's kind of a different story because that dude is really good and accurate with his throws. They still have Kamara in the backfield, but the Niners defense is not something to be. I don't know. I would be scared of the Niners defense. Let's just put it that way. They looked really good in week 1. If they can get to the quarterback, they're going to cause all kinds of problems for the Saints. If the run defense steps up, it's not going to be easy for the Saints for any reason. I think Mac Jones still has the ability to throw the ball pretty well for that team. He's kind of just a plug and play guy, and he and Purdy. I do think Purdy's really good, really accurate. But I do think Mac Jones also brings a little bit of a difference in that he can run the ball as well. So I do think the Niners, I will take. I'm not sure exactly where the line is right now, but I'm just going to take a -2.5 on the road. I think that they'll be able to win this game by at least a field goal. But it really depends on how well the Saints offense plays and who starts at quarterback for them. If it's Rattler, I might even think of buying it up a little bit and taking the Niners like -4.5 or something and trying to get some plus money in there. But I still think Mac Jones is going to be able to outduel Rattler. So I'm going to stick with the Niners -2.5.
Yeah, this would be interesting just to see how the Saints game plan for the game defensively, because you have no Kittle anymore to worry about. Ayuk's obviously out. I think I did see an update that Jawan Jennings was cleared, and so he should be expected to play, as is Ricky Pearsall. McCaffrey looked good coming back, healthy. Didn't get in the end zone, but I feel like knowing Shanahan, he's probably going to pound the rock with Christian McCaffrey, knowing that you have a backup quarterback coming in the game that you can also put in the slot if you need to. So
Yeah.
I expect McCaffrey to have a good game. I expect the Niners to get it done. Like you said, I'm not a Rattler fan necessarily. I don't hate the guy, but I don't think he is going to get a win for the Saints with the roster that they have. I'm going to take the Niners with the -3. And then another player prop that I like for this game is Rashid Shaheed to have 36 yards. I think that is pretty easy, pretty doable for a guy that they can probably just throw in the slot. Uh, he runs screens all game, and he can probably get 36 if he gets 5 targets. He can also be a deep ball threat, so one catch, and he can easily clear that. I will say the Niners defense looked pretty solid. They only gave up 13 in Seattle to a pretty solid Seattle team. Obviously not one of the best teams in the league, but they're solid and they were at home. So big turnover at the end got them the win. We've talked about Michael Williams. I think he's a stud that came up to draft for him. I think that was a great pick, and then Bosa got it done at the end of the game. Still a little bit more questionable with the corners, and I think that the Saints will provide more of a threat between Olave and Shaheed, and Jawan Johnson had a solid game than just having Jackson Smith and Jigba as the only one getting targets all game. So being able to spread the field should make the game interesting, but I think the Niners should still get it done.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, the Seahawks did kind of surprise me last week. Cooper Cup, kind of lack of looks. Like, you know how good he is. I'm just surprised that he and Darnold weren't able to make that connection immediately. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how that builds. But next game with the Bills and the Jets. Jets had a really interesting game in Week 1 against the Steelers. I think everybody expected that game to go under, and that was probably the highest scoring game of the week, other than the Bills Ravens game. Then on the opposite side, you have the Bills, who had that Ravens game down 15 with less than 4 minutes left. Josh Allen just doing some Josh Allen MVP things, defense showing up in a big moment. Um, yeah, I just think that the Bills are going to be able to take care of the Jets. I feel like the Jets are kind of their baby brother that they just pick on. So I expect the Bills to be six. I'm going to take a -6. I'm sure the line's a bit higher than that. I do expect it to be a blowout, but um, if Fields can get running the ball kind of the way he did in Week 1, could keep them in the game. I just don't see them being able to cover a touchdown.
Yeah, it was interesting to watch that Ravens team. I think everything's built around Derrick Henry. Obviously, he had 180 yards and a costly fumble at the end of the game. Uh, but because he is able to have 180 yards, they were able to start getting the ball to Zay Flowers. I don't think Brees Hall has the same ability to break open the field as Derrick Henry. I do
Yeah.
like Brees Hall, and he had a great week 1. But I just don't see that happening, and so I think the passing game is going to be hard to open up when Garrett Wilson's your true only target.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, I do think the Bills also cover 6. The line's 6.5 right now. I'll just take the 6.5. Why not? I think that they could easily win this game by double digits. So I think 6 is a fair play. The thing that does scare me is that Bills defense gave up a lot. But again, you got a quarterback that can run it, arguably the best running back in the league. He was almost 2,000 yards rushing quietly last year.
Yeah.
And then you had Zay Flowers, who was still a stud, and they didn't even target Mark Andrews. I think he had 1 catch for 5 yards, and we all know he can get in the end zone too. So I think there's just too much talent on the Bills roster. I think the line's a little bit skewed because the Jets did play so well,
Yeah.
and I think the Bills will get.
Yeah. Right on. And then we got the Seahawks and the Steelers. Um, Another interesting game. Been kind of back and forth, but I'm just gonna stick with the Steelers money line. They're at home in this game. They just got a nice win on the road against the Jets. I think Aaron Rodgers looked super vintage in Week 1. Like, he looked awesome. 4 touchdowns on, I think it was 80% or 75% completion percentage. Super fun to watch. Not too sure how I feel about their running game after losing Najee Harris. Um, but obviously, Rodgers and DK Metcalf and some of the other wide receivers looked really good. They got Darnell Washington, I think, is their tight end, and he's like 6'7", 300 pounds or something like that. Runs like a 4.6, 4.7. It was pretty impressive to see him get the ball a couple times. And the Seahawks, I just expected them to play a little bit better in Week 1 at home. I know Darnold obviously has a new team to fit in with, but like you talked about a little bit earlier, just with only having Njigba to throw the ball to, didn't really see him target Cooper Cup all that much, which was a bit of a shock. And I think that the Steelers' offense and defense, I really like, even though they had a lot of points scored against them, I do think the Steelers' defense is going to be able to settle in. TJ is going to probably end up making a big play in this game, late in the game again. And yeah, I just see the Steelers winning this one.
Yeah, my gut's still telling me to take the Seahawks, but I don't really like the Seahawks on the road when they really do only have one threat receiver being Jackson Smith and Jigba. That should be 2 with Cooper Cup, but like you said, they didn't really target him. I think he had 3 targets all game. He had 2 catches for 15 yards, and he slipped and fell on what could have been a slant going for 75 and a house call. Um, that's not going to cut it against the secondary of Jalen Ramsey, Big Play Slay,
Yeah.
and everyone else that they have on that Steelers defense. They didn't run the ball that effectively against the Niners either, between Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, who's always hurt. And so the more I think about it, I think the Steelers should be able to get it done. I'm kind of seeing a low scoring game here.
Yeah.
2 defenses that are solid. I want to say Metcalf's going to have a huge game against his former team. But at the same time, I feel like no one knows him better than Tariq Woolen and all those other guys that are very quick. So maybe he could be quiet, and if that happens, it'll be a low-scoring game. Like you said, Steelers run offense between Caleb Johnson had 1 carry, and then Jalen Warren kind of got the majority of the touches.
Yeah.
But yet
Warren.
again, didn't do too much. So if anything happens, it's going to be passing the ball, and I feel like both these teams have pretty good. front fours as well as corners. So I could see a low scoring game. I would expect the Steelers to get it done despite that. So
Yeah, right on. And then we will move on to the Browns and the Ravens. Not a game that I really want to talk too much about. I don't think the Browns are going to be able to keep up with the Ravens, especially with the Ravens being at home in this game. I think the line's 9.5. I'm going to buy it down to 6.5, just because in case the Browns defense does manage to show up, I could see the Ravens only winning by a touchdown. But I do have a pretty solid feeling that they're going to be able to cover the 10. But yeah, I'll stick with 6.5.
yeah, I feel like this could be a 41-17 win for the Ravens. The fact they put up 40 and it wasn't good enough is tough, especially with an uncharacteristic fumble from Derrick Henry after having 170 plus on the ground and another 15 in the air. So I think that they come out pissed after blowing it. I think they start the game hot with a couple of scores. Do like the Browns defense, but I don't love their offense. However, I do think Flacco can continue to sling it every time he's in the game. It seems like he's thrown for 300 despite
Yeah.
everything else. Judy is solid. Had a good 60 yards, I think, last game. Didn't really see much of Njoku. I think he had about 30 yards, but the rookie tight end that came out of Bowling Green that actually was the Triple Crown tight end winner, despite Tyler Warren getting the award. Harold Fannin Jr. is actually a stud. He had quite a few plays. I think he was targeted more than Njoku was last game. So between those three targets, a lot of checkdowns to Dylan Sampson. The Browns should be able to put up some points, but I do think the Ravens are going to limit that to 20 or less, probably less, just after giving up 40 to the Bills and blowing away. So I would expect them to cover the 10. I would expect them to cover more than that, but I'll just stick with the Lions.
Right on. And then we got the Broncos and the Colts. Broncos obviously struggled a bit on offense last week. Just kind of week one vibes, kind of what I was getting from that. Kind of struggled to run the ball until RJ Harvey had a big 50-yard run in the third or fourth quarter. I can't remember exactly what that was, but that really kind of got their offense going. And then JK was able to punch it in from 20 out. I thought that if they were able to run the ball like that the whole game, it would have been a blowout. So I do think I'm going to stick with the Broncos money line here. I'm not super confident on it just because Bo did seem like he wasn't super settled in week one. But I do got to give some props to the Tennessee defense. They looked really good. The Colts front four is also pretty good. So I do think that that could give Bo trouble. But I just have a strange feeling that the Broncos are going to start well in this game. And usually when they start well, they end up winning the games handily. Their defense, I think, is going to be top three, top two in the league. They looked incredible against the Titans last week. They went for it on the offense went for it on 4th and 5 or 4th and 4 on their own 45-yard line. And there was really no need to. They should have just punted the ball. But I think that Peyton had so much confidence in his defense that he didn't really care, which I think is a pretty cool thing to have. So yeah, I just think the Broncos defense is going to play really well again. They got athletes all over the place. Added Hufanga and Greenlaw, and Hufanga looked incredible in week one. I think he had the most tackles on the team at 10 in week one, which was awesome. And then the Colts, I think they're just going to slow down. Obviously, it was a pretty competitive game between these two last year in Denver up until the third quarter when Anthony Richardson made a lot of mistakes. But I think that Bo will eventually settle down in this game, whether it be at the end of the first or somewhere in the second quarter. I do think that he's going to start to get his footing and kind of get back to where he left off last year. So, and I think that Daniel Jones is going to obviously struggle a little bit more in this game. He's got a really tough defense he's playing against. Front four is solid. Linebackers are amazing, and their secondary is probably top notch. Getting Jahdae Barron in the draft, Jaquan McMillan, Pat Surtain, hard to throw the ball against those guys, and their safeties are also amazing. So, yeah, I just think the Broncos defense, again, is just going to prove to be too much for the Colts.
Yeah, all of the Colts last week, that was against the Dolphins defense, where you didn't expect much. I do think Daniel Jones is going to be able to do more than Cam Ward did just because they spread the offense so well. There's four different guys, like we mentioned, that could go for 800 plus yards receiving, as well as a great running back. Decent line now. They've been better in the past, but decent line to give Jonathan Taylor holes, and he can obviously make a big play at any point. So I think that they should be able to do a little bit better than what we saw from the young Titans team. However, I don't think the Broncos are going to turn it over 4 times again. I think that they should be better. Um, this is a game that feels like 20 to 17, 23-17, somewhere in that range. But I do think that the Broncos are going to be able to get it done. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we saw some breakout runs. I know A-Chain played well for the Dolphins. They just couldn't hand it off that much to him when they were behind the whole game.
Yeah.
So if Harvey starts to get more touches, or even J.K. Dobbins getting more touches, I'm sure that should be able to open up the field, like you mentioned. They didn't have that till the end of the game last week. So if they can get the ball to him early, pound the football, let Bell use his legs a little bit, I think it'll open up the rest of the game. Broncos should take care of business.
Yeah. And then moving on, we got the Panthers and the Cardinals. Obviously, Panthers struggled against the Jags in week one. Then Cardinals actually looked pretty solid against the Saints. It's kind of hard to tell kind of where the Cardinals at just because they played the Saints. I think everybody was expecting them to win, just didn't know how evenly matched the game would be. I think this is going to be another one for the Cardinals. It's like you got to get your wins early in the season against these not so good teams that we expect to be 5-6 win teams at best. And I think the Cardinals are going to win. I'm going to take them -2.5. I think that's buying it down a little bit. But yeah, I just don't have too much faith yet in Bryce Young. I do think that he has moments of brilliance, but it's just the consistency and being able to put it all together, combined with their defense, not, kind of more of the same, just needs more consistency. I think the Cardinals will be able to win this game as well. I just think they got too many weapons on offense, and Cardinals defense I feel like has been getting steadily better, and it really hasn't been talked about enough. Will Johnson, man, I think he's going to be an absolute problem in the league. He had that massive hit on Olave last week that I just couldn't stop raving about. It. That was awesome to see. I always love seeing rookies just fit right into place with the team, and I think that he's a great fit there with that Cardinals defense. So yeah, I'm going to stick with them -2.5.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I mean, I wasn't surprised considering I said I felt like the Saints could end up covering 7 or 6, I think is what I said, and it ended up being a 7 point game. But like you said, I think everyone knew the Cardinals were going to win that game just because the Saints suck. So I wasn't shocked, but I was hoping that I would have gotten more out of the Cardinals. A more dominant 30-14 even would have been great. Didn't see that, so it worries me a little bit against the Panthers team that did look like they had some light at the end of last year. Just because of what we saw last week, I'm going to take the Cardinals as well. I think I'm going to take it at -3, maybe even -4. Just because the McMillan, Chuba, like the two guys that we like and talked about, both played pretty well. But there was no one else really to throw the ball to on the field. I think Hunter Henry was the next best target for them. Or not Hunter Henry, Hunter Renfro was the next best target for the Panthers, and he wasn't playing football last year. So, like, I think that says enough for what their offense is made of currently. And I think they have some work to do. So I like the Cardinals. I'll probably take it -4. I think there's going to be some decent value in that. I think that they should be able to get it done.
Yeah, I'd say the main thing for our viewers is just keep in mind how young the Panthers are. I think pretty much everybody that's a main key on the offense is in their first or second year, or I think Bryce Young basically is second year. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a lot of struggles for them now. They got a lot to build, and their defense more of the same. So yeah, I love the Cardinals in this one. And then we go back to the Super Bowl from last year. We got the Chiefs and the Eagles. Chiefs being at home in this one. This was the other game on the slate that really kind of had me going back and forth, other than the Patriots and Dolphins, because I do feel like there's going to be a little bit of motivation for the Chiefs just from that Super Bowl loss, and I have a tough time seeing them start 0-2. Now, they're definitely missing a lot. They're missing Xavier Worthy. They're missing Rashee Rice. So they're definitely lacking some of their weapons. So I think it's gonna come down to who runs the ball better in this game. Obviously, the Eagles got Saquon. The Chiefs got Pacheco. So two really good running backs. It's going to be all about the front four on the defensive side of the ball. Both these teams have incredible front fours. I thought the Eagles did lose a little bit in the secondary, but they ended up drafting really well in the secondary, and those guys are definitely going to settle in sooner than later. But yeah, after just being super back and forth, I don't really want to make a solid pick on this, but if I had to, I would take the Chiefs money line just because they're at home and they're going to want a little bit of revenge from the Super Bowl. Yeah, just keep in mind they're super banged up, and then Eagles obviously looked solid, but they didn't look amazing in week one against the Cowboys. So yeah, I just say take this game with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I'm on the other side of this one. I think the Eagles are going to get it done just because the Chiefs are so banged up. Um, the line for Pacheco's rushing is at 36, and that bothers me because if they're only going to be slinging it, I don't necessarily love them to win the game. I like teams that run the football, that can use the clock well, and I think the Eagles have a really well not system quarterback, but good system on offense just to be able to run it effectively, throw it effectively. And that wasn't even showcased against the Cowboys. They didn't throw it much. I think they had 152 yards in the air. AJ Brown had his first target on the last drive of the game.
Yeah,
Uh, and I think Devontae Smith only had 3 catches for 20 yards or something like that. So that's something that we didn't get to see, and they still got it done at home. And I think we were all surprised how close of a game it was. Sort of, I obviously had the cover, but I think it was better because Jalen Carter was out, and that's huge for their run game. So Javonte Williams got 2 scores for the boys, and that wouldn't have happened with Jalen Carter there. I can tell you that much.
yeah,
Definitely wouldn't have been getting 4 yards a pop. And now they also added Zadarius Smith on a 1 year, up to $9 million deal a few days ago. Obviously, got Tank Bigsby as well in the trade. So I think they're already bolstering the defense a little bit and then have a little bit of backup running back depth outside of Shipley. Didn't really get to see AJ Dillon, which I was kind of surprised by. And so I'm wondering if there's more injuries that are there, which is why they want to get Bigsby. But I think they're going to try and slowly work Saquon in throughout the year, 15, 20 touches a game rather than 30, just because they do want him to be healthy again at the end of the year when they do have enough running back depth. But I think Hurts is able to sling it. I think Mahomes can sling it. The problem for him is that he's running low on receivers. I mean, Hollywood Browns is number 1 this week, expected to put up 60 yards. Um, and then Travis Kelsey's at 40. And then one of his favorite targets, in my opinion, is Juju Smith-Schuster. His line's at 29, so I took the over on that. I think that's a great line for this week. Even if all 3 of them hit the over, that's still Mahomes only at 140 passing yards. And if they're going
yeah.
to win, they're going to have to sling it. So I kind of like that line. And I feel like the Eagles are going to win this. They just won by 20 in the Super Bowl against this team, and now they're more depleted. So we'll see just because it's on the road.
Yeah, I think another prop that probably isn't getting talked about enough is I do think Pacheco catches the ball really well out of the backfield. So I don't know what his reception number is going to be at, but typically for a back, it's like at 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, somewhere in that range. If it's at 3.5, I think that he could very well get 4 catches just because with having Jalen Carter, it's going to be tough for Mahomes to wait for plays develop to get the ball down the field. So I think it's going to lead to a lot of checkdowns or him running the ball kind of like he did against the Chargers in week 1. He did really well on the ground himself. So if it's at 3.5, I think that's pretty safe play for Pacheco. I think that he'll likely end up getting 4 receptions, kind of like the way you talked about, just really depleted. If the other guys meet their over-unders, then Mahomes still only at like 120, 130 yards, and he's going to have someone else to throw the ball to. Pacheco catches the ball really well out of the backfield as well as Saquon. So I think that both their reception numbers actually could be definitely a number to look at in that game. We'll move on to the Falcons and the Vikings. Falcons are honestly pretty solid with Penix in his first true start. I guess I should say like first seasonal start as the number 1 because he did start I think a couple games last year. But I thought he looked really good in week 1. Obviously lost a tough one at home to the Bucks. But I think the Bucks are going to be kind of that sleeper team that nobody really expects to play that well, and then they end up obviously dominating. And I think the Falcons just lost a tough game. I don't think there's really a whole lot more to it than that. Obviously, probably could have tied it there at the end, or maybe had the go-ahead touchdown at the end, but ended up with a costly turnover. And then you got the Vikings on the flip side. They're at home in this game. They just were able to mount a sick comeback against the Bears in week 1. I don't really see that being able to happen again. I think that it is a little bit of a shaky Falcons defense they're going against here, so I could see JJ being able to get the ball out, but I just don't see them having the amount of success that they did against the Bears in week 1. I know the Bears were a little bit depleted at the linebacker level, so they were able to get some screen passes and short passes for big gains, and I don't really see that as much against this Falcons team. And I think Penix is ready and due for his first big NFL win. I think this is a perfect game for it. That being said, I'm not going to take the Falcons on the money line, but I do love them plus 4.5.
Yeah, I like the Falcons in this one. I wasn't blown away by the Vikings just because everything came together in the fourth quarter, and it only happened when they had good field position. So that just changes your playbook, the way that you can defend it. And Kevin O'Connell's phenomenal, and then obviously we saw Jettas make some great plays. So with that being said, like you said, Penix threw for almost 300 against a solid Bucks team. I am intrigued to see if Drake London is healthy. I know that he left the game against the Bucks, and he was questionable for this week. So that could be a huge change of events if he doesn't end up playing. But I also know that Darnell Mooney is supposed to come back this week, who also missed last week. Falcons almost got it done. They had a missed field goal, and then lost by 3 at the end of the day versus a
Yeah.
solid Bucks team. And
Yeah.
Amika Ibuka, who went crazy, as we kind of talked about, we like him a lot. But I think going on the road is going to be tough in the Minnesota. But I'm going to take the Falcons +4, like you said. I'm hoping that they get it done by at least like the cover of 4.
Yeah, love that. And then yeah, we'll move to that Buccaneers team against the Texans here in week two. Obviously Texans lost a really tough game to the Rams last week, really low scoring game. Kind of shocked by that, to be honest. Two really good defenses, but obviously offenses that you expect to score more than 14 or 12 points. So it was a little bit of a shock to me. Um, I'm kind of back and forth on this one as well. Obviously, the Texans need a win, but I am really high on this Buccaneers team so far this season. I think their wide receiver room is probably the deepest in all of the NFL. Um, Once they get Godwin back, it's going to be pretty wide open for Baker to throw the ball to whoever because they got Ibuka, McMillan, Godwin, Evans, even Tez Johnson will be able to probably get some snaps and get the ball if he's not returning it too much. So I think this Buccaneers team is just loaded at wide receiver. They obviously got Bucky Irving in the backfield, who really broke out for them last week or last year. I do think that he is also going to be a big factor in this game as well. If they can get him the ball and open up the offense a little bit, then the wide receivers I think are going to have a field day with this Texans defense. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the Buccaneers money line. I do like the Texans. I just feel like they're still missing some pieces that need to come back from injury at wide receiver. Tank Dell, I think, is still out. I'm not sure exactly how long he'll be out for. And then they're definitely missing Stephon Diggs in that Week 1 game. Just miss it seemed like they're missing that continuity in their offense. And then obviously Mixon, I don't think is playing, so they're running the ball with Chubb. Chubb's coming back from injury, so I feel like all these guys are just kind of easing back in, and it's going to take a few weeks for them to kind of get back to football's game speed. So yeah, for that reason, I'm going to stick with the Buccaneers money line. I think they're playing this season so far with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, big comeback to get the touchdown with under a minute left in the last week against the Falcons. Abuka is obviously an absolute weapon, and like I said, when they get Godwin back, it's going to be pretty crazy to see kind of how that offense performs because I think Baker has really settled into being a good QB1 for them, and as long as he just kind of keeps scoring and doing his thing, I like the Buccaneers defense to keep them in games. So yeah, I like them here against the Texans.
Yeah, another one. I agree with everything you say. Just because it's at home for Houston and they need the win, I'm going to take Houston to win on the money line. I'm not going to touch the 2.5 point line. It seems kind of strange. Yeah, I mean, I think Amika is going to have another good game for the Bucks. I was surprised how quiet Nico Collins was against the Rams. I know the Rams defense is good, but I think he had 2 receptions for under 25 or 30 yards, which was just shocking. I think the number one receiver target for the Texans that week was Higgins, their late first or early second round pick. So Jaden Higgins is solid, and then obviously Noel was another receiver that they just drafted. Um, Dalton Schultz had a few catches in there too, but I just need Nico's going to bounce back. Drake London had a good game. Pitts had a good game. They were just able to move the ball effectively, and someone's got to be able to make big plays when they matter. And I think Nico Collins is that guy for the Texans. Like you said, they don't have Mixon, which I've talked about before. I think we've talked about it together. I think that's a huge loss for them, and because of that, we had talked about them potentially not winning the division this year. Uh, with how the Colts looked and Jags looked, I wouldn't be shocked at this point, especially if the Bucks get it done. But I think CJ Stroud's going to step up, have a big performance. Nico's going to go crazy, and someone else is going to have to do something. So maybe they can run it effectively with Chubb, but if not, then they need another receiver to step it up. And I wouldn't be surprised again if it's Dalton Schultz. I know 3 catches for 28 yards. We talked about his line being right at that last week. I think he could easily go for a much needed 50 and have a big play down the field, open other things up. So we'll see how it goes. I'm taking it with caution, but I'm going to take the Texans to win it at home.
Right on. Then we got the final game on the slate, the Chargers and the Raiders. Both teams looked great in week one. The Raiders had a pretty convincing win against the Patriots. It was a little bit back and forth, but Raiders obviously had that clutch factor at the end, even on the road, which I thought was pretty impressive. Then you got the Chargers who took out the Chiefs in week one. That was a pretty big win for Justin Herbert. I don't think they had beaten the Chiefs a whole lot in the past few years. So it was good to see Justin Herbert kind of get some confidence under his belt. He looked incredible in week one. So I do think that this Chargers team, we talked about it before the season, they're definitely ready to go for a pretty long run deep into the playoffs as long as they can perform in the first game. So yeah, I do like the Chargers minus 2.5 this week at the Raiders. I do think that the Raiders might be able to give them a few issues, but just based on the fact that they played so well against the Chiefs, everybody seems really healthy on the Chargers. I think those are two big factors for that team. And Harbaugh's in his second year now, obviously knows the guys, and I feel like his coaching style and the way he's getting these guys prepared is definitely a lot better so far, at least in week one. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the Chargers minus 2.5.
Yeah, I love that line. I think that's one of my favorite ones this week. At the Raiders is interesting just because it's divisional. But they really didn't look that great against the Patriots. They got it done, but it was tied through the fourth quarter, I believe. They do have a lot of weapons. Jacoby Myers obviously did end up playing, had 100 yards. Brock Bowers had 100 yards. And they were able to, get the ball going. They weren't able to run it at all. And so I think that's going to be another a need for theirs if they want to have a chance to win this game. And I don't see it happening against a solid Chargers defense. And I don't expect it to be Geno running forward either to kind of open up the field, being 30, whatever he is. So with that, I think the Chargers get it done. I think they should be able to cover 3 points fairly easily. I'm kind of seeing it to be like a 10 to 17 point game. So this is actually one of my favorite plays at just a 3-point line.
Yeah, right on. Well, that will wrap it up for the NFL slate. We'll be back shortly. Hopefully get a video posted as well for college football. Going to discuss that a little bit more soon. And then, be on the lookout. Looking forward to this week for NFL. Obviously, got a little bit different lines. Quite a few games that are pretty intriguing this week. So we'll see kind of where everybody stands after 2 weeks. Then, we'll go from there. But yeah, thank you guys for all tuning in last week. Catching us on a big week. We definitely needed it. This is a good way to open up the NFL season. And look forward to this weekend, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace.